Welcome to the Growth Boss podcast, where we seek out the secrets to high-performing campaigns from some of the smartest marketers in the world. I'm your host, Jared Smith. Today, I have Ben Fisher with me, and he's going to teach us what it takes to dominate Google business profile listings in Google. Those are the Google Maps. Ben, thanks for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jared. This is awesome. Looking forward to talking to the people on the Growth podcast.
Awesome. Ben, so for people who may not know you yet, can you give us kind of a quick 60-second overview of your background?
Basically, I've been in digital marketing for over 30 years. I started out in a little town called Flagstaff, Arizona, 250,000 people. When you asked somebody to put up a website URL on their window or their business card, they looked at you sideways like, why?
Right.
Okay. Who knew? Just saying. So anyway, fast forward, worked in the enterprise space as far as SEO and digital marketing. And of course, just doing anything with for enterprises that range from large scale hosting companies like GoDaddy, for instance, was one of my clients, to working with software as a service. So that was really interesting. And I got out of that in 2013. And steady demand was kind of born out of experimentation, I guess you could say. What I was able to figure out, though, is that by creating engaging content that was actually engaged by other users, whether it be through regular means or false means, was actually something that Google was utilizing as a search signal. And I was able to basically repeat this experiment over and over and over again with different entities, and it would just work. And, so we'd be taking somebody from nowhere to number one in less than 72 hours, and then we could maintain this effort and it would continue to work. And when you stopped, it would stop working. And so that was really interesting, of course, until Google Plus died.
Right.
So we had to shift our business very quickly. And so we pivoted into social media and Google Maps, basically, at that time. Anyway, we had one of our first clients actually get suspended from Google Maps. They were a gun shop out of California. The interesting thing here is that on calling support, which you could do back then, they said that they were going to be removing gun stores from Google Maps all over the world. And I said, what? That makes no sense. Why would you do that? Guns kill people. Okay, guns kill people. So let me ask you questions now. You need to ask these questions. The question is okay, so liquor stores. Alcohol kills more people than guns any day of any year.
Right.
Are you going to be removing liquor stores? We're thinking about it.
Oh my goodness. This is what the customer service rep said on the other side.
Yes.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, well, hold on. What about smoke shops?
No.
Right? Cigarettes kill more people than alcohol, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm not looking at stats here. I'm just making shit up as I'm talking.
You're right.
It's like I could say killer whales for all I know. I don't care at this point. And they're like, yes, we're thinking about that too. I was like, really? Okay. So, and I said, and there's this place up in Flagstaff. They sell guns and alcohol. You can take them off the maps too? They're like, probably, yes. Guns and alcohol. Yes. Well, yes. No. I got to speak to a supervisor, please.
Yes.
Ahmed, or whatever his name was, he comes on and, and we're talking and I'm asking him the same questions. And he's coming back with the same answers. Now I'm going, wait a minute, there's something really wrong here.
Yep.
This makes no sense. So I went ahead and I went to the forums at that time. And I opened up a thread that basically said the whole story, identified the customer. I said, A, I want to help my customer out. B, this makes no sense whatsoever.
Exactly.
No bleeping sense, basically, whatsoever.
Right.
And, so basically that got escalated. My mentor, Joy Hawkins, she went ahead and she escalated it to the community at that time. Google took a look at it and all of a sudden, bam, my client was back online in less than 3 weeks. And they reversed their decision-making process on gun stores, and gun stores were now allowed to be on Google Maps. They just couldn't manage their profiles. That was the story. I lost that client. Changed the world at the same time.
Yes. Gun store owners everywhere should tip you or do something for you for sure.
They wouldn't be in business.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. So the thing is that, and so that's where I learned very quickly that I could do something to help my business, but I could also do something to kind of help the world at the same time.
Yep.
For me, it became a dual purpose. One, do good. Well, actually, more purposes than that. Do good, get close to Google, work with them, work and network and learn from the other product experts like Mike Blumenthal, you know, and just getting to know everybody that was in there and enriching myself and learning as much as I could.
Yeah.
And so for that, became one of the earliest Diamond Google Business Profile product experts. So basically, my company, of course, as you would figure, we have 5 Google Business Product experts on our staff. You know, we've got a bunch of SEO people as well. We've got some local service ads experts, which we've kind of grown in-house. And then the rest of our people are work on GBP or writing, etc. So we've got about almost 30 people, well, 25 people. But yeah, so basically, we are local SEO experts, I
Yeah.
guess you could call it. And we enjoy helping customers, make sure that they stay on Google Maps and
Yeah.
that they
That's awesome.
thrive, that they thrive.
And from what I understand, you've done over 6,000 reinstatements as, a diamond level product expert with Google. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I kind of stopped counting at this point, but yes.
Okay. Well, I do want to dive into that, and I want to dive into the kind of the common issues that business owners run into with getting penalized and different things of that nature. But before we dive into that, Ben, the average person listening to this podcast has some level of map experience, map background, maybe their third, fourth for their top keywords. And they're like, listen, I've gotten all the, citations that I know to get. My profile is completely filled out. I've kind of covered the basics, and yet they're not number one or maybe number two in their niche. What would you recommend to that type of business owner?
Oh, God, that's a very large question. So let's start off with the levers that you can pull in your Google business profile that will actually make a difference.
Okay.
Anything else that I am not mentioning, by the way, does not make a difference at all. So, for instance, you will not hear me say anything about keywords in reviews. You will not hear me say keywords in descriptions. That means they don't work.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
You will not hear me say anything about saying, publishing EXIF data or any kind of data into images, because guess what? It doesn't work. All right. So on to what does work. So the first thing is I would say is the most important thing is going to be your address. And this is your verification address. I don't care if you're a service area based business hiding your address, or if you're a storefront that serves people as well at their location. Either way, there's always an address. An SAB has a verification address. That is what Google uses to basically at least start to gauge the proximity that you're going to rank, which on average, when you're talking about a service area based business, you're going to rank approximately 2 miles from your verification address. Sometimes you'll go longer based on the number of competitors in the area and the number of people that actually live in that area.
Okay.
So if you're in San Diego, yeah, you're probably going to rank 2 miles.
Yep.
Maybe if you're lucky, right?
Right.
If you're in Redbud, Illinois, you're probably going to get around 50 miles.
Right.
Just saying.
Yeah.
From your farm, right? So, but no, seriously. So, and if you're a storefront, it's going to be anywhere from 5 to 10 miles on average. Usually, again, same rules still apply. If you're in San Diego, if you're a Wingstop, yeah, you're probably going to run up against another Wingstop really quickly.
Right.
So anyway, okay. So address. Second thing is going to be your category. Your primary category weighs more, and as far as importance goes, than your secondary categories or your subcategories. You can have up to 9 subcategories in one primary category. Again, primary is more important. There is a great list of categories at Plepr, PLEPR.com. Just registering, you get in, kind of see it. Or actually, I'm sorry, they have a free tool for categories. And just remember the one tenet with categories is who you are, not what you do. So a category is not fixing plumbing.
Right.
Wrong. You're a plumber. So my point is that keep that in mind when you're doing it. So for instance, you won't see a Safeway with a category of bakery. Because even though they have a bakery inside, they are not a bakery.
Sure.
Okay. And it's really tough for people to get their heads around this. But that is the way it is, and that's what Google wants it to be. And it's also about stopping consumer confusion. Okay.
Yep.
Same thing with like being a florist. If you want a florist, you're really looking for a florist. You're looking for a flower shop,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Yeah.
You're not looking for a Safeway, for instance.
Right.
Or if I'm going to an Olive Garden, well, why would you put ice cream shop as your category just because you sell ice cream?
Right.
Again, who you are, not what you do.
Yep.
So that's inaccurate, basically. By having inaccurate categories, you're going to get a lot of inaccurate leads and phone calls. So anyway, and also another thing though is there's no such thing as category dilution.
Okay.
This is a myth. Category dilution means I've got too many categories, so therefore I'm not going to rank well in my primary category. Does not exist, does not happen.
Okay.
Again, accuracy is more important. The URL that you are pointing to is very important as well. Okay. So for instance, if you're going to be linking to a page on your website, be it the home page or a location page, you're going to choose whatever ranks best, basically, for your business.
Okay.
So if the next big one's going to be the business name itself. The business name, as it shows on Google Maps, unfortunately, has a very high weighting on how you're going to rank for your keywords. And so basically, if you have Jared Smith, growth podcast for medium-sized businesses consultant, you would never do this, of course.
Of course.
But you could if you really wanted to.
Yep.
This started out with personal injury companies actually spamming the maps and, having personal injury, San Diego, blah, 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 XYZ law group. Because it works. And it continues to work this very day. Google has not dampened the signal whatsoever.
Okay.
So feel free to add keywords to your business name.
Exactly.
Just do it right and we'll get into that. Do it right and we'll do it within the guidelines. Otherwise, you will get penalized. Now, once you do that, you are going to face a situation where competitors will attack you and they will change that name and they will try to do other things to get you rid of you, basically. So you are putting a target on your back. You get visibility, but now you're a target. So just understand that.
Yep.
So this one was this is an interesting one. It's been highly contested and discussed. I sit on one very side of the fence. People call ours a ranking factor. I don't call it a ranking factor. I call it a filter.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. Because
it basically states that if your hours are say 9 to 5, well, guess what? At 5:05, if somebody searches for a baker, then they're not going to find you,
right?
Because you're closed. But this makes sense.
Yep.
Because you're closed, right? So that's why I call it a filter versus a ranking factor. Some people want to do 24/7. I say, if you're going to do that, fine, great. Again, target on your back is what you've got. But at the same time, just make sure you have an answering service, basically. Yep. But the problem is that when you're showing hours as 24, that means that Google and people are expecting that you will take somebody 24 hours.
So you're going to get a call at 2 a.m. and if you don't pick it up, your competitor is going to be like, nope, nobody picked up. Report these guys, right?
Or I'm going to leave you a bad review you'll never get rid of.
Yeah.
And that's probably worse.
Yep. Good point.
Yeah. So don't do that, basically, I guess is my point. It's like, it's just not worth it. I say get something like CallRail, track your CallRail hours, metrics, Yep. All right. Reviews. Reviews matter to the number, meaning that you get your first ranking bump at around 10 reviews and your second ranking bump is going to be at 100 reviews. Ooh. There's nothing else after this, by the way. There's no data that supports any ranking boost, which is why sometimes you'll see somebody outranking you and you still have more reviews than them. So focus on those. And then you want to just focus really after that. It's based on competitiveness. It's like, do you want to have as many reviews as your number one competitor? Of course you do, right? Yeah. Sure. Why not? But get reviews for people. Don't get reviews for Google. And again, keywords don't matter. Okay. So I've seen too many owners put in a response that literally is 90% keywords and 10% thank you.
Yep.
Wonderful. Glad you do underwater basket weaving. The next one's going to be attributes. Attributes are based on Google Trends. And so that's why you'll see things like identifies as Black owned, identifies as veteran owned, identifies as Latino owned, things like that. There's other ones like wheelchair accessible and things of that nature. These are all under the services area, I believe it is. It's what they call services inside of GBP info tabs. But anyway, you do want to check off what applies to you. Now, when you check these things off, you got to watch out a little bit because these also will turn into what's called a justification. Justification is when you're looking on Google Maps and underneath it, it says this place also offers, right? Or this place has curbside pickup. The thing is that some of these attributes, you can turn them on and you can say no. So has or has not.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you select one of them, it's going to publish and you can't turn it off.
Sure.
So the only thing you can do is turn it on and then say does not. And then does not is going to actually show.
Okay.
Okay. And it's going to hide any justification that you would have had.
Okay.
Which could be this place also offers blah because
Yes.
based on your reviews or something else. So you got to be really careful about these. And there's only one way to remove them at this time, and that is to go through support. Good luck with them understanding what you actually want to do.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Next thing is going to be what's called services. And services is basically an area of your GBP where you can either accept services that Google recommends that you offer. For instance, like when you do HVAC, you're going to have a whole bunch of different type of HVAC types of services, or plumbing, you're going to have draining, etc.
Yep.
But you can also add custom services. So either one of these, by the way, will trigger ranking benefits within 72 hours of you actually filling this out.
Okay.
So it's a nice bump.
Yes.
It's not amazing. It's not like you're going to go from like number 20 to number 1 overnight.
Right.
No, but if you're like number 2,
Mm-hmm.
it could be the difference between you being number 2 and number 1.
Love it.
I probably should have led with that, huh? And so it's kind of recently been found that if you have popular times on your GBP profile, then you will rank better based on your popular times, which again kind of just makes sense.
Yep.
That would happen. You can't really fake this. Sure, you could drag a bunch of phones into your place at
right.
noon every single day, throw them in a wagon or whatever,
Yeah.
and you can do. People have done this, by the way.
I'm sure they have.
Yeah, and it'll work for like that day, and then all of a sudden it won't work.
Yeah.
So there's that. I'm going to say that beyond your other overall SEO organic strategies, that's it.
And that was actually what I was going to tie into next, was the organic side. And how important is that to ranking in maps?
Very.
Okay.
Very, very, very important. I cannot stress how much organic SEO, the importance of it. And here's why. The way I like to explain it is this with a visual, and that is that you've got, say, a fist. This is your organic algorithm. You've got a handling on top of the fist. There's your local algorithm. The organic algorithm influences your local ranking. Your local ranking and local algorithm do not impact your organic. So it's a one-way street.
Yep.
Which is great because now whatever we're going to do to help ourselves organically is going to help locally too. Yay, right?
Yep.
So really focusing on the core tenets of SEO, right? Optimizing for users, not for Google. I always talk about that. Making sure that the content that you have is really good. It's very helpful to users. People talk a lot about EEAT, right? Which is great. But really, if you're paying attention to your users versus Google, you're already adhering to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So don't try to game the system. Doesn't work. Not long term, at least.
Yeah.
Getting links, it's always a good thing to have.
Hmm.
Even though there's a lot of controversy back and forth,
Hmm.
well, Google says no, and the leak said no, and the leak says yes, I think too, actually, and who cares?
Right.
Experiment,
Yep.
just experiment. It's not going to cost you much in money or time
Right.
to do so, and results for you may be different for results for your competitor as well.
Yep.
And that's a big thing that people don't really understand. And sometimes what your competitor is doing is not going to work for you.
Right. Absolutely.
So, so sometimes it's best to have somebody who can do the analysis basically for you and kind of weigh different types of options. Um, but yeah, on-page SEO, off-page SEO, even citations to a degree, not huge. Citations, directory listings like Yelp, things like
Yep.
that. I focus on the top tier ones and local citations. I don't focus on the little guys.
Okay.
So services like Yext or Moz or anything like that,
Forget about it.
yeah, you just don't need them
Okay.
unless you're like an enterprise.
Okay. And what about
Um,
posts? Are posts important these days?
Posts or a conversion type of factor.
Okay.
They are not a ranking factor. Okay. But I mean, I've had lawyers who pull, $60,000 worth of cases out of posts.
Wow.
That's their commission. You know what
Incredible.
I mean?
Yeah.
So does it work? I like to say yes.
Yeah. Just not the way that most business owners think it does.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yep.
Again, stuff the keywords in all the things. It's not gonna help you.
Okay. Okay. So again, one of the huge benefits of having you on the show is your background in looking at thousands of different issues that pop up for business owners. What are
Sure.
some of the more common issues that you see? And is there anything that business owners can do to protect themselves? Maybe the top three.
I mean, we get pulled into some of the most disgusting issues you can think of.
Sure.
Like, God, one for the books was this hijack where this one cousin basically was part of the business, took over the GBP, kicked out the owner, changed the phone number, changed the website address, and then rode on basically 30 years of yeah, exactly, a 30-year-old business. And when you tried to take it back, it wasn't happening.
Right.
And even using Google's process to take it back wouldn't help. Actually,
Unbelievable.
I mean, it was a 6-month process. It was amazingly frustrating. Um, and then there were other issues too, technology issues, like the owner didn't know how to, believe it or not, didn't know how to use Google Gmail. So there was a hurdle there.
Yes.
Anyway, but no, I mean, we see all sorts of issues. I mean, we see issues like ranging from, like duplicates, which are really horrible to deal with, verification issues. Right now, we're seeing a really bad one with, things where it's saying like no more ways to verify, which is really, really frustrating with when it comes to that with Google, because somebody just wants to get verified and go.
Right.
And, and now it's like, okay, I can't get my GBP listing. And with suspensions, I know how much money somebody's losing
Hmm.
because they tell me and they
Hmm.
can prove it.
Right.
It's like historically, I made $10,000 this week.
Yeah.
I lost $10,000 at least this week.
Yeah.
I'm going to be laying people off in the next couple weeks, which is
Right.
true too.
Yeah.
But suspensions are probably the biggest thing.
Okay.
Missing reviews, those are up there as well. That's a frustrating point, but it's not as bad as a suspension. When you're dealing with a suspension, that basically means that Google either doesn't trust you or they don't trust the profile in one way or another.
Okay.
Well, and it's usually going to be from a data standpoint that either, and people are going to hate this one, but either the visible data point or invisible data point, which is much more common actually.
Hmm.
And you can't find this out unless you have a looking glass.
Yeah.
Is really what it comes down to. But what's horrible about it is that, number one, Google has a very bad way of communicating what's going on and why you've been suspended. Because of the EU, they have to be a little bit more transparent. But to be honest with you, their transparency means nothing because they will say you have deceptive content. Well, what is deceptive content?
Hmm.
I've dealt with thousands upon thousands of these things. I still can't nail down deceptive
Wow.
content. You know what I mean? It's like I see it and I'm just like, the phone number is legit, the website's legit, there's no problem with robots.txt. The phone number's on all clear lists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like there's not keywords in their name. All of the data lines up. There's nothing wrong with any of their documentation. You know, they've got their signage, blah, blah, blah. Everything checks off just fine. Nope. Deceptive content. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Random.
Google. I've seen scenarios where it's like you just create a brand new Google business profile and they say there's been a posting content violation. Okay. Posting of what? So
Wow.
sometimes the reasons that they give you mean nothing,
Yeah.
I guess is my point.
Okay.
But yeah, seriously. So uh, when you're dealing with a suspension, you don't know why, you don't know what's going on. Um, the only thing you have is an appeal tool where you can go see if you have been approved or not, where you can go ahead and you can submit your appeal. And then you'll hopefully hear back within about a week. And that's either going to be your appeal has been denied or your appeal has been approved. It's very binary.
Yeah.
And if it's been denied, you're kind of SOL.
Okay.
Okay. There is a secondary method to appeal, but it's not very well known. And, and it's kind of like basically that's it. And when you're doing the appeal process, there's a certain step in the appeal process where you have to submit evidence. And they tell you you have 60 minutes once you've clicked this button to submit evidence. By the way, it's in really tiny font. It's
I'm
horrible.
sure. Yeah.
And then they have a link that you have to click to open up the evidence
Not
page.
making it easy on you.
No. And so what do most people do? We hear it every single day. I was supposed to submit evidence, but I closed the window.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't realize I had to click the link, or whatever the case may be, right? So that happens a lot. Um, but again, it's like kind of like you're kind of SOL at that point.
Yeah.
It's like you have no choice. You have to make a new listing and try and get your reviews. And good luck with that, depending on your scenario.
Right. Right.
Um, the other thing we find out is that so you're down, right? And you want to get back up on Google. You're losing lots of money, or whatever that number is. And but what we found out through compiling all of the data on reinstatements is that only 4% of businesses are prepared with their documentation to become reinstated.
Wow.
Think about that really quickly.
Yeah.
4 out of 100 are ready to be reinstated. So what that means is that 96 other companies are going to be offline much longer than they were supposed to have been if they've got all their stuff.
Yeah.
And nobody has all their stuff.
Yeah.
So, it could be something as simple as you need a utility bill. If you ask somebody for their business license,
Right.
common in franchising, they have an LLC that doesn't have their business name and they don't have a DBA for it either.
Right.
Or they have a DBA, but the DBA isn't on anything else.
Yeah.
It's on their business license, not on the utility bill. It's not on anything. It's not certificate of insurance, whatever. So all of these things are really hampering factors. And here's why. To change your business license, sometimes it depends on the state and the city. You have to actually mail in your application, wait for that to be processed, wait for them to mail you back your certificate. 3-month process. Get a utility bill in your business name. You have to call the utility, Verizon or AT&T, or whoever it is. You have to harangue with them and see if they'll even do it, because
Yeah.
sometimes they won't. Sometimes you have to prove to them with that DBA, which you don't have,
Right.
which can now take 7 to 10 days, depending on the state that you're in, or longer, or require proof of printing, or publication, which Florida needs, right? Which takes another whole long time. Either way, you have to go out and do this. And now you're worried if you can even do it.
Yeah.
And if you can't do it, what's going to happen? I mean, are you going to be offline all this time? So anyway, unnecessarily, you're offline for a very long period of time, whereas somebody who has their stuff together is online within 3 days. So that's the bad part.
Okay.
The worst statistic is that 36% of businesses are going to be suspended at least one time per year, depending on the category that you're in. Okay. A lot of people in the service industry need to be scared about that number because that's
Yep.
real. I even have some customers who they get suspended, they'll come back up and they'll be down in within 30 days because they have a competitor who's reporting them.
Yep.
And again, that invisible information that's out there, that's what causes this. So yeah, so suspensions are I would say the top thing that can kill you.
Man. And so is there anything that a business owner can do to protect themselves aside of having all of the information kind of ready to go in the event that this were to happen?
There's some things that you can do, like getting a Better Business Bureau accreditation is a good idea. Getting a Chamber of Commerce link is a good idea. These things cost money.
Sure.
You know, making sure that your data is consistent across whatever directories you're in and on your website, believe it or not, is also consistent. It's pretty key, that you do make sure that everything is consistent as possible, basically. And beyond that, it is getting ready. And, I recommend that you, and I'm going to say this is a promotional plug here, but, one of the things I do is I say recommend getting a professional. And we started our service, which we call My Business Assurance, based on the fact that we saw that 4% number.
Yep.
Like, if that's that bad,
yeah,
we should help people before they're suspended.
Right.
So we help them basically come into compliance. Number one, also helps with expanding territory too, because people like to set up multiple offices,
Yep.
which you can do, or you can change your name, which you can do as long as you're in compliance.
Right.
But we have a whole suite of protection measures, actually, from backing up reviews and making sure that we can help with the reviews and review attacks, review extortion, fake reviews, things like that. All sorts of stuff like that. And then, of course, if a listing gets suspended, we get it reinstated. So, but yeah, that is one service that we do offer. But beyond that, I mean, if you're going to get suspended, you're going to get suspended.
Yeah.
I mean, it really comes down to that, unfortunately. There's not a ton that you can do to mitigate it, but there are those couple things that you can do.
Okay. Very good. And Ben, for those that do want to connect with you, use your services or get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. Yeah. Steadydemand.com is our website. I am very active on Twitter. I don't call it X.
Yeah.
At the social dude.
Yeah.
Is my Twitter handle. I repost a lot of news there. I post news there. Of course, if I'm seeing something going on, I post it there as well.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. I was going through your profile earlier today. You've got a lot of great, news stories and kind of updates that are happening in the Google Map, Google Business Profile world. So really appreciate your time and thanks for being on today.
All right, Jared. Thanks so much.
Awesome. And to our audience, hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please like and subscribe, depending on the platform you're using. Whatever you do, definitely don't share this with your competitors. Thanks for listening to the Growth Boss Podcast.